When no one was looking, Lex Luthor took 40 cakes. He took 40 cakes. That's as many as 4 tens, and that's terrible. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, uh, many of you might have seen that on the interwebs or the worldwide nets um, as a meme, as something shared from person to person and as some kind of funny kind of thing. And you might be wondering to yourself, wow, um, it got to be so popular that it actually became part of actual comic book canon. It was added into Superman Secret Origin by, I believe, I think it's Jeff John and Gary Frank. Like, but we saw that and thinking, like, wow, what comic book does this come from? This seems to be like one of the silliest, stupidest comic books ever. I love it. I want to see like if I could find it. It did not come from any comic book. It actually comes to something that I was a it was a very important part of my life growing up. It was from a book called the Super Dictionary, and the Super Dictionary is exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like it would have a it's a dictionary featuring uh, the DC Comics characters delivering their information about um, different words and stuff like this. This example was for the word 40, hence the reason why it was repeated several times in several different ways. Um, and that's why it seems so stilted and so amateurist. It was aimed at a grade school audience. My first experience with this super dictionary came from um, my local elementary school, Scarfield Elementary in Pittston, Pennsylvania, which I attended for the first 4 years of my education before they closed it down. Every classroom, it seemed to have one or two copies of this volume. It was a big, hefty volume, especially when I was a kid. Um, and during quiet time or alone time or private time, when people used to be reading stuff like this, I used to go grab it off the shelf and cruise through it. It was I wasn't official, as you know, if you've been watching this. Um, by the way, welcome to Growing Up Comics. I forgot to do that in the intro. I was so um, trying to go all fancy with the Lex Luthor thing that I forgot to say that. Um, but as I was growing up comics, if you watch other installments of this, you realize that during the early 70s, when I was in elementary school, I wasn't really a comic book collector, but I was a comic book reader, and I did enjoy comic book media in all its various and sundry forms. And this was definitely a sundry form of it. Um, it was amazing to see all of the heroes all in one place. These were done by a company called SRA with a license from DC Comics, of course. A lot of the artwork was done by DC, taken either directly from DC comic books um, or done originally for the book by artists like Joe Kubert. Joe Kubert did a lot of this stuff. Later in I'm going to talk about a certain Heroes World um, uh, comic toy distributor kind of thing, and he did a lot of the artwork for that as well. Um, but these would appear in like on the shelves of all the rooms I was in, and I used to like read them all the time. Usually, I would before I read them, I would ask the tell the teacher I was a little warm and take my overshirt over off and revealing my underoos underneath. Made me feel like a little superhero. Um, and I don't know if they caught on the fact that that's the reason why I was doing it because I wanted to spend the second half of my school day in second grade um, being the Flash. Um, but nonetheless, I digress. Um, these were a very comprehensive, very very wide ranging, very kind of very thick book. Every entry was illustrated by a variety of DC comic book heroes. They had them all. You had Superman, you had Batman, you had Wonder Woman, you had Supergirl, Batgirl, you had Lex Luthor and the Penguin and a bunch of other villains. You had Conjura, El Dragon, the classics, all the classic. What is that you're saying? Um, Conjura, El Dragon. You're not familiar with those characters? Oh, there must be a reason why would it. Oh, because they're only created for this publication. Since it was going into every classroom across the world, or at least the country, um, they wanted to go for diversity. They kind of changed the way their certain like characters that didn't need to be white turned into a person of color. Today, people go crazy over this, calling it woke, but you know, you're trying to reach the kids who look, and having somebody who looks like them in the book is a good way of doing that. So, you know, keep your woke to yourself. But regardless, um, as an effort to do this, they created two new heroes for this dictionary. A woman called Conjura, who is an African American woman. Um, she was she was a magician. She had her powers are magic, and she's kind of like sorceress. She's kind of like a stand-in for Zatanna, if you want to, better for better or worse. Um, and they also had El Dragon. El Dragon had was a Latino who had mental power, mental control over all things electrical. So I guess he could control electricity with his mind. Um, uh, he is single. And he has a pet parrot. I'm seeing this off the internet, stuff like this. Um, this is to like add a little bit of color to the map of heroes. Um, DC didn't really have many heroes of color, and the one primary one, Black Lightning, was a character whose rights were tied up in with its creator Tony Isabella. So they were seemed to refrain from using that in any kind of um, outside kind of media. Hence the reason why it's Black Vulcan in the Super Friends and not Black Lightning. So instead of using the African American Black Lightning in here, they created a new hero completely out of whole cloth um, to take the place as the African American on the team. Um, and was all the entries as hokey as this one? Yes, yes. Um, Basically, you have to realize that it wasn't campy for campy's sake. It wasn't hokey for hokey's sake. It was designed to be as simple as possible to educate its target audience, the kids who are learning to read and learning new words and stuff like that. So it wasn't exactly a case of like, you know, them being ironic about it. Laugh all you want, share it on the internet all you want right now, with several, almost 50 years of removal from it. Um, you know, it's designed to be that simple. Um, so that's the case of it. Um, you are able to find some of this online on eBay. You can find everything on eBay. Let's be honest. So it's kind of like you could. I don't know if it's like something that's taken from a school or bought doing stuff like this. I got a copy because you know it meant so much to me as a little kid because I mean it's like one of the last times that like going to school was fun because you know um, just various reasons, but knowing every day I could go in there just like even look at the pictures, like being able to see like a conceptualization of Hawkman in a little um, in a dictionary was a great thing for me as a kid. It's like, wow, look at this. You know, comic books are really something. This is they're helping entertain and educate people. Yay! So it meant a lot to me during the time there. But I have it. I remember it fondly. Um, my question is, too, do you remember it? Do you remember it at all? Do you remember seeing it? Did you have it in your classroom? Um, or is this a whole brand new and foreign territory for you? I'm sure there's whole generations out there of comic book collectors who never knew this thing existed. Um, Never had the exquisite joy of actually um, opening a book and seeing Lex Luthor steal cakes, you know, live in a person, um, in an actual book with actual paper. Um, so therefore and forthwith, um, like, is there anything else that you'd like to know about this? If you put in the comments, I'll try to figure it out. If you are an old geezer like me and you remember it being in your classroom, did you have it in your classroom? Did you find it someplace else, like through a local library? Did you what you think of Conjura and El Dragon? To be completely honest with you, um, until I did the research for this, I had no idea they even existed. I completely forgot about them. Yeah, I don't think like DC didn't have any really Latino heroes back in the '70s because the book came out in 1978. So it like they had El Dorado, which came out later, and El Dorado was a Western hero, so he wasn't really at the time. They had an El Dorado was a Western hero. He wasn't really part of like the whole modern day Justice League kind of thing. So it's kind of like you know it's been a while before they got around to creating a Latino hero. Uh, Vibe, Vibe, I think was the most famous one that came about, and less said about Vibe, the better. So that was fun just to go back memory lane and do that. Um, yeah, um, so if you do remember, you have a copy of it. Put in the comments down. If you found this informative, hit the thumbs up button, give me a like, and if you like this kind of content, I do memory lane every Wednesday, uh, and I have enough for a foreseeable future, and I have a big backlog of videos there. Um, so yeah, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I post a new one, so you know when it's coming. I really appreciate it. That's all for now. I'll join you next week for another edition of Growing Up Comics. But until then, keep on collecting.